My name's Jonathan, and I am basically the product manager for Ball State Achievements.
My name's Scott Rinke. I'm the coordinator for Ball State Achievements.
And Scott's also kind of the unofficial game master. So basically, Ball State Achievements is a lot of fun. It's what we spent the last year and a half working on. And so I'm going to run through a little bit about the app. Scott's going to talk a little bit about gamification and all the lessons that we've learned. And then, by all means, I can actually just show you the app. If you guys want to come up later, I can actually show you how it all works. So, pretty straightforward. Ball State Achievements is a front end, Android, iOS, and then a back end that we made for administrators. Obviously, for this crowd, this is pretty well known. But the basic premise is. College is getting more expensive, and your family's income has a big impact on whether or not you're likely to graduate and succeed, right? So at Ball State, about a third of the students receive Pell Grants, and so what we try to do is really focus on the Pell Grant recipients to figure out how can we increase retention, how can we increase persistence. Pretty straightforward objective. So how are we doing? So far, after a year, we've found similar results for spring, but we haven't finished crunching all the data yet. Our app users are getting a higher GPA than our non-users. Pretty straightforward, right? The exact results we want. However, this is the one that drives me crazy. The overall GPA for freshmen is 2.9. So you can see the best students using the app that are Pell students, so the lower income students, are still below the average freshman. So the real objective for me now is how do we close that gap between our app users and the average non-app user? If we look at engagement, So obviously the research, student engagement is incredibly important. Basically, if we can get them engaged early, then we can close some of those gaps. And so from our perspective so far, we've increased engagement tremendously. So our app users are significantly more engaged in campus events than non-users as well as the general population. Some of the things are obvious. They're more likely to have an on-campus job, but other things, attending cultural events, attending sporting events, so forth and so on. What do the students say about all of this? Well, it's kind of fun. Students absolutely love the app. And the one that I think is most interesting is this: I like using it and getting free Ball State stuff. So students participating in this program earn a currency, and they get to spend it on things like t-shirts, and this year we're working with the tech center, so they might be able to get an iPad, so forth and so on, other sorts of things that they need in order to succeed in college these days. But basically the students absolutely love the app, and they capitalized that last one. We didn't add that. What's interesting to me is that, again, the getting free stuff, I kind of want to tell the students, no, you're not getting free stuff. Don't you understand? You're working for it. You're doing things that are really important, that are really good, but they don't see it that way. They love participating, love being engaged in this. In terms of adoption, because they're Pell students, we can't publicly identify and go after them in the usual kind of ways. So we had to do this organically, and we hit about 25% adoption by the end of the first semester, and we passed 50% adoption by the middle of the second semester. So of our potential user base, that's how we did. For some reason this is going super slow. There we go. Hope I didn't hit it. So basically, what were the models that we looked at when we created this? How many of you use the Starbucks app? Curiosity? One. Delta or any other frequent flyer program? So you're familiar with how these loyalty systems work. So we looked at this and we basically said, okay, what can we do? How can we use the systems that are out there and encourage students to engage in things that we want them to engage in? Now, at some level, this may seem like an obvious type of thing. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to look at all of the behaviors outside of the classroom that we could incentivize students to complete And I know that seems very vague, but it is intentionally vague. We wanted to say, like, okay, what are the behaviors that we all know or that research shows outside of the classroom that incentivize behavior that's positive for retention, persistence, graduation? So for example, enrolling in your class early, right? Your enrollment window opens. It might open for 2 weeks, depending on different schools, right? Different enrollment windows. If you enroll in the first 2 days of your enrollment window, your class is more likely to be open. If your class is more likely to be open, you're more likely to get into it. If you're more likely to get into it, you're less likely to be stuck around for another year because that class might only be offered in fall, right? A really simple behavior, a very small behavior, but one that can have huge ramifications for students. And so those were the kinds of things that we were looking for. So quite simply, we identified these types of behaviors, and then we identified some sort of action that we want the students to take, so enroll in the class early, and then we determine a value for it. And Scott's going to talk a little bit more later about how he manages the economy and the value. From the student perspective, they're just getting a curated experience of things we want them to do. So the students see the achievement, they see its value, and then they can turn that into free stuff. So they do the whatever it is, whatever the behavior is, then they earn bennies. That's our beneficence is Ball State's famous statue and whatnot. So we go with bennies. Everything in this, by the way, is Ball State themed. So, so the students earn bennies, and then they can turn those in for free stuff. Like I said, there's a built-in store. So pretty simple model. And the hard part, though, is getting everyone on board, right? So these are all the different groups on campus that we have integrated into the app. And we tried to flip the model a little bit. This is not automated. It's all manually done. This is a manual process. This isn't some sort of awesome Amazon learning algorithm thing where we're taking everything that's going on campus and encouraging students, are there students like you? Buy this. Like, that's not our goal. Our goal is to say, okay, very, very specifically, we offer students a tremendous range of activities across campus. And I think every campus is like that. So from our perspective, how can we encourage the students to do those things? So what we did is we took all these different silos and we organized them in the app in a very simple way. So in the app, we just created categories. And again, the students just see things to do, and then they see the value that we've attached to them. So again, quite simply, you can see over here in the app, like I said, I'm happy to show this later. So you can see there's just the list of categories. When they open that up, they see the achievement, they see its value, and then they see a little description. So the one example that I always use, basic exploration achievement, find the bursar's office. We have this nice little description to say what the bursar does. I mean, these are foreign terms to most students when they first come to campus. So this way they get on campus and we encourage them to explore all the various places. And then of course the next step, find a career center. Okay, now you've found the career center, meet with a career counselor, take this career assessment, do the resumenia. There's all sorts of then other activities that we can encourage that branch out of those various basic achievements. So anyways, that's the app. Oh, and then the back-end side, of course, allows us to set up the achievements. So that's the app itself. One last thing that I want to point out, this was something when we were developing this that was really important to us. We made sure it was completely accessible. So when we built this, we tested it out, color blindness, all those typical basics, as well as it's fully accessible on iOS and Android. So that was something we wanted to make sure that when we created this program that we could really include as many people as possible. So anyways, so that wraps up the app portion, and now Scott's going to talk about gamification.
Sure. Thank you, John. So like John said, I'm a big gamer, and so when I kind of got a hold of this project, I wanted to turn it into more of a game or add gamification features because I thought that would help engagement and keep students involved with the app. And this is really sort of, the examples of a Starbucks or a Delta Rewards app. This, in my opinion, is kind of what sets it apart, is how we can have engagement through gamification. So what I'm going to share with you guys are some gamification tools that I know of that I like to refer to, and I'm going to tell you how I've kind of used those. Jonathan and I have used those to, I think, for the betterment of the app. And then I'm going to share some lessons learned in general over the course of the past year. So kind of the framework that I'm going to use is actually from a blog from Mark Rosewater. It's called 10 Things Every Game Needs. Do we have any gamers in here? Anyone who's real big on, okay. Are you interested in game design or just kind of the playing part?
Mostly the playing part.
Okay. Well, do you play Magic by chance?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So you know about this. Anyway, Mark Rosewater is the lead designer for Magic the Gathering. And for those of you that may not be that into games, Magic is kind of considered by a lot of people to be kind of the game. In terms of game design, it's very well designed. So if you want to learn more about this, you can refer to his blog, but I am kind of using that as a framework here. So I'm going to go through these 10 things very briefly, and then we'll talk about a few of them specifically. So number one thing every game needs is a goal. There should be a way to end the game. It makes sense. Almost any game you can think of, a lot of the time, the way that you describe it is how you win the game. Monopoly, you play it by, getting all the money. Tic-tac-toe, you get 3 in a row. So usually the goal is almost the first thing you explain to someone about a game. And the second thing are the rules. And the rules are literally what makes a game because it shows you the constraints. It tells you what you can and can't do. You can only put an X once per turn. You have to put it within the grid, those kinds of things. So the rules literally define what the game is. Interaction. So interaction is anything involving you and another player in some way, and that can be against each other or with each other. So you may be helping each other towards a goal, or trying to keep someone from that goal, or sometimes both. There's all kinds of different things, but the main thing is that you're working or interacting with someone else, and it makes it interesting because it adds that human factor to the game. A catch-up feature, pretty self-explanatory. So most games, it always feels bad when you're playing a game. I think everybody's kind of played tabletop Monopoly with their family or something, and one person's way ahead, and it's like, well, why should we even play? But a catch-up feature is like Boardwalk or Park Place. You've got nothing left. We've got a hotel on Boardwalk, and so there's a chance that you can come back. That's a catch-up feature. So a game should have some way, even if it's a glimmer of a chance, that you can still win. And if you don't have a chance to win, then you shouldn't be in the game. You should have been out by then. The game should have considered you, a loser at that point, I guess. Inertia. So inertia is kind of interesting. Inertia is something that forces a game to end. So you don't want a game, it's bad for a game to have a completely cyclical nature, like to where you can just go back and forth theoretically forever. So there has to be something that drives a game to an ending point or some kind of next major milestone. For instance, like Tetris wouldn't be fun if you had an infinite pit to put the blocks in. There'd be no way to lose and no way to win. Surprise. So surprise is kind of it can literally be a surprise where, I didn't know that could happen. And it happens, or it can be kind of explained as like chance. So kind of like landing on Boardwalk, like there's a chance this could happen. When I draw a card, it could be a good card, or something could just happen out of the blue that you didn't know could happen in the game. Strategy. So making sure there's strategy in your game, it allows for a person to have a feeling of growth and to feel like they're getting better at your game. So, there's a lot of games out there where you start it and you kind of feel like you're lost, you're kind of in the woods. Magic the Gathering is actually a perfect example of that. The first time you play, you don't really know what you're doing, you're getting beat a lot, but slowly over time you learn strategy and you start kind of, hey, now I'm about as good as this person, and it's very deep in what you can learn and how you can grow as a player. 8, fun. That's just kind of in there as a reminder, because a lot of times, sometimes you can get lost in some of the other things. I got to have a catch-up feature. You're almost like mathematically trying to perfect, how your game works as far as how many board spaces are away and what someone can roll. But at the end of the day, if people are having fun, you've done a pretty good job. So it's just something to pay attention to. Flavor. Flavor is probably one of my favorites on here. So flavor is described kind of as the story or design of your game. So these are the elements that I keep talking about Monopoly. I hate using Monopoly over and over again. But like the flavor of the Monopoly pieces, like the little hat and the dog and stuff like that, they could have easily just been pawns or anything else. But that adds flavor to the game, that they're these little like semi-valuable trinkets. It makes you feel like, and even the Monopoly money, the choice to make it look like money, not be tokens. So it's anything that kind of adds that next layer of connection to the game through story and design and characters and things like that. And 10th is a hook. And this is more of a businessy thing. And I'm not going to talk about it here with achievements, but a game should have a hook in some way that it makes you interested. Like when you see it, when you see somebody play it, when you hear somebody talk about it, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna check that out. I might try to play that game. Obviously, that's from a business perspective, but it should have something that makes you very interested in what it is at the core. So I'm gonna go over a couple of these: interaction, inertia, surprise, strategy, and flavor, in terms of how I tried to implement these things into the app to make it more fun and to make it more engaging for students. Of course, the other things are in here more or less, but I don't really think they warrant a whole lot of talking about, I guess. So interaction. So again, that's allowing or forcing players to interact. And it's kind of the key difference between a competition and a game. Like in a foot race, you can't really, you can't stop what someone else is doing or help them. But in a game, you can. And so we wanted to have a way that you could do things with friends that would be beneficial. So we made it to where you can claim an achievement with friends. So if you want to go to a counselor together or go to a basketball game or something like that, we'll have that achievement in the system, and then you can claim it with your friends together, and you get double the experience and double the bennies. So, and that actually comes from some research that we had going into this project that said that students that had a positive peer influence, that was considered the I guess the best, characteristic to have. The best thing to have for a Pell Grant recipient was a positive peer influence. And so we were thinking this is a way to kind of build those friendships, people that are also doing positively aligned things. And so next, inertia. Obviously we wanted a way to keep people using the app and keep people moving forward and doing these things that we need them to do at the university. So that's where the experience comes in general with the ranking system. So the ranks, right now we have 5 ranks. I think we're going to extend that to be actually even more so that the player ranks up more frequently. But those ranks unlock new backgrounds and UIs for the app, as well as like passive bonuses like percentage increase in how many bennies you may get in a certain category, things like that. So it kind of promotes a feeling of growth, but it also shows the player like, you are moving forward, or this is what you're moving to. And in terms of pushing it forward, there's experience points build. Yeah. So, well, I was going to get to another one with that, but so different goals and milestones like these levels, just a tip for game design, they should always occur before the player is satisfied, and that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but the reasoning for that is you never want to be playing a game and hope that it's over. Like you don't want to be playing a game, you're like, man, this is a long, boring game. So you always want people to finish your game and say, let's play again. So like tic-tac-toe is the perfect example of this, where, has anyone ever played one game of tic-tac-toe? It's the perfect example of inertia. Okay. And the leaderboard also pushes students. So surprise. Unpredictable moments that can be known or unknown mechanics. So these kinds of things just kind of jostle you into, they make you remember that you're playing a game, that anything can happen. So they're always important in any game. And so the way that we kind of implemented surprise was they can receive, so some achievements, the student doesn't, I guess, technically do anything in the app to do it, or they don't have to. So like if they visit the library, visit the rec center, there's certain, if they get all A's and B's, different passive achievements that are hooked up to like university systems, they can get achievements on the app for that they may not have realized they had done. So that way they get this notification pops up, hey, you won, you got this achievement. So that's kind of an element of surprise. And then the other factor, that's kind of like the unknown aspect of surprise. And then the unknown element of surprise would be a critical strike feature, so to speak. So a critical strike in RPGs, I guess, role-playing games, is when you might have like a 1% chance to hit for double damage. That's what a critical strike is, for those of you that might not know. So we want to implement a feature called an overachievement, where they have maybe a small amount chance to overachieve and receive double XP and bennies on any random achievement. So that way, anything that they do, they may have a chance to win bigger, so to speak. So strategy creates a feeling of growth, allows players to feel like they're powerful, like they're doing things right, they're winning the game. So you have to allow for strategy in a game, and the way that we're allowing for strategy is we have repeated achievements such as the rec center and the library, where they can do those over and over again, but they can only get credit for it once per day. So the goal is to, I guess, allow students to strategize, and in strategizing, they're basically learning daily planning activities. So, the way to maximize their efficiency in the app is to go to the library every day and then follow it with the rec center, which is obviously what we really, really, really want them to do, and then plan their events and things like that accordingly. And then we also have boosted achievements. We can feature certain achievements for certain times. Like if we really want students to fill out a certain survey or sign up for classes, we can make that achievement worth, 3 times as much at the beginning of signups and then decay over time or things like that. And then flavor, these are the story elements. It creates a deeper connection with the game because people tend to like to see the characters and see themselves in it. So the flavor of the Ball State Achievements app is, of course, Ball State, but also kind of a 16-bit cartoony type of style, and that was kind of to reinforce both the gamification aspect, but also the lightheartedness, that this isn't necessarily like we're tracking your numbers and your GPA and your retentions and your blah, blah, blah. It's more like we have a lot of cool stuff that you can do, and you can do it, and we'll give you cool stuff if you do it. And so we wanted to kind of reinforce that attitude with the design. So all of the icons for the achievements and the avatars for the students are all kind of in this cartoony 16-bit kind of style. And then there's even, you could say that there's even flavor in the store in that we offer Ball State store items. So, students that participate in our app are getting more Ball State t-shirts, Ball State stuff like that. So, it's very specific that they got it through the app, got it at Ball State, as opposed to, say, a Walmart gift card or something that just doesn't have much meaning at all as a prize earned. Okay, so we'll go on to lessons learned, and John can kind of chip in on some of these. These are just kind of general, couple of things that we just kind of learned over the course of the year that we'd like to pass on to you if you're thinking about doing anything similar. So don't just listen to your power users. I think we were pretty bad about this last year. We had a few people that were just crazy into the app, using it every day. They'd literally call us, stop by our office, and that was just a handful of people. And, it feels good to have someone that's just this huge fan of your app. But I think we listened to them maybe more than we should have, or didn't pay as much attention to the average users, the more quiet users. So it's difficult. Sometimes it's not as easy, but try to pay attention to all your users and not just the ones that are kind of like reaching out to you and stuff like that. Prepare for success, failure, and stagnation. Anything where you're kind of looking at a population or some kind of adoption, you never really know what's going to happen. And so for us, like we didn't have, in some way we didn't prepare for as much success as we had in some areas because we didn't have repeatable achievements ready right off the bat. So then some students would like run out of things to do. And then in terms of not having enough people, it's good to prepare for all of those different things.
Yeah, literally, like, we had this huge initial rush, and we were like, yeah, this is awesome. And then the number just dropped off. Mm-hmm. And it was like, uh-oh. So not only did we kind of lose our initial wave and our initial momentum because we ran out of, we didn't realize how engaged the students would be. We then had to rebuild that momentum several times because we would run out of things for the students to do. And it's this this is one of those things, if you're in higher ed, you know this. I went to undergrad on quarters, Ball State's on semesters. And so I still feel like a semester is a long time. Like, to me, it just feels like a long time. And so, there's those kind of different waves. Now that we've been through this, we know a lot better how to manage it. Oh yeah, the students have a ton of time at the beginning of the semester. And so, like, let's ride that wave up. Let's get them engaged early and keep them engaged. But no, around midterm, they're going to drop off, and that's fine. Then, in the fall semester, they go off on Thanksgiving break. Then they come. How do we keep them engaged? And one of the ideas that Scott had that we implemented that was a huge success was we did a Black Friday sale, and so the students were home, right? I mean, they're not even on campus, and so we did a Cyber Monday sale technically, but we basically started it kind of that weekend. And when the students all came back to campus, like, that was without a doubt, our usage just spiked that day. Every student was just like, oh, seeing what they can get in the store. I mean, it was a great way to really bring them back into campus and get them re-engaged in the app immediately. So by that point in the semester, we'd kind of hit our rhythm. But you literally could see number of available achievements and achievements earned, just direct correlation. There wasn't stuff for them to do. They just didn't, obviously aren't engaged. And what amazed us is just, huge success. And then it was like, oh, wow, that's great. So.
Yeah, and in general, the number one feedback we've gotten from everyone is just put more achievements in. That's the first thing every student has said. So this was really surprising, I think, for all of us. Students were very happy with less than expected in rewards. I was kind of telling this story to someone else in the exhibit hall. When we first started this out, we were thinking like big rewards, like talking about cuts in tuition, and students will do it, and if we give them these massive rewards, and I think I started out wanting like $500 per semester or something per student to earn in rewards, and we wound up settling with like splitting it as it was $500 total, yeah. So $250 per semester, and that got cut down to $500 or $250 total for $125. So basically, that we would, in the economics, we would allow for a student to get $125 worth of rewards per semester. And I was very iffy about that. I wasn't sure if that would be enough in terms of like, the feedback and getting them to do that. And students were happy with like a hat. Like students would do things and they'd earn bennies and they'd buy an item that was worth like $10 or $20. And then they'd give us feedback and just say like, we love it. We're super happy with, because we asked them specifically, like, do you think this is fair? Do you think the work you put in is worth what you get out? Things like that. And I don't think a single person like thought that there should be more awarded.
And we were running like, again, starting this, we were running all sorts of hypothetical bounds, right? Like, if every student on campus somehow gets on this, and they all do every single conceivable thing, what is our putting on my administrative hat for a moment, what is our theoretical maximum financial exposure for engaging in this experiment? And, how can we get business affairs to okay that? We ran a lot of kind of just paper simulations to see what our exposure was. Not a problem at all. The students love it, and it takes like nothing. And we actually have virtual products now. So I'm trying to get more virtual products built into the app because, if they can get, Ball State wallpaper for their phone or something like that, and they spend money on that, well, that doesn't, don't tell the students, but that doesn't cost us anything, right? That's, the actual financial liability for virtual products is basically zero. So that's where the whole avatar thing came. One of the things that we have in the store now is to get your own custom-made avatar. Again, the economic reality of that is it's very low compared to what our initial ideas were, iPads, and we did a whole focus group initially, a whole semester, where we basically gave them an imaginary like store and gave them imaginary points and did the classic, what would you want? Mm-hmm. And so, we did have like $500 worth of books, and there was a lot of things that people wanted. So we were like, okay, this is, but no, happy as can be getting points.
It was pretty clear, and I think it's a huge testament to just gamification in general. Like, you could tell that they were satisfied with, I guess, kind of being told good job in a way, like just getting that achievement, and they're like, yeah.
And the app does it too. Like,
yeah. because a lot of them
Congratulations.
Exactly.
I don't know what you just did this.
and like the way that they kind of described it was like, I got an achievement and I got this thing from the store. Whereas in our head, it was like, you do that to get that. But they're like getting double reward is in their mind, which is great. Okay, so adding features and mechanics is always a last resort. I will admit I was guilty of this last semester. John works on implementing the technical aspects, and I make up crazy things that I want to put in it.
Yeah, we actually have, we're using probably about a third of the features we've built out.
Yeah.
So that's just to give you a sense of where we are. Like that's something that has been surprising. We haven't had to use a lot of the features that we've built out already. So as far as I'm concerned, like we're set for the next 2 years of this, because the getting all of the alignment among the staff, you can pretty much go to the next one. I mean, getting the alignment among the staff and getting all of the different units on campus engaged in this, and getting them on board and getting them to understand what they can do and getting them to understand the achievement types and just really getting them up to speed on what an achievement is and what
Without changing the app.
Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, like for feature-wise, we're basically done. Like we're not using what we've already got in there. And so what I'm trying to do now is work with Scott more to get a greater variety of achievement types in there, because right now, for the most part, like Scott has in there, the last one, the content is king. Like that's really true. And right now, everyone still thinks of card swipes. So on campus, to go to the rec center, to get into the dorms, to go to an event, to do whatever, the students swipe their ID cards. And so we've created a bunch of achievement types beyond that. We have these little micro surveys, we have pin codes, we have obviously GPS-enabled ones. We have a variety of ways for students to earn achievements. And these were all directly from ideas that we got from different units. But everybody now everybody's been hooked on the card swipe. So we literally ordered more card swipe readers. And so, so now everybody's thinking about the card swipe instead of thinking about all of the other things that we've built out.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the features and mechanics is especially important with that, because like it's so easy with digital, with apps and things, just to say like, oh, we'll just add that or add this. And you kind of you just want to really push whatever mechanics or features you have, what you dreamt of at the base of the core of what the game is, and just push that until it literally breaks. And if that breaks, then you've discovered a new feature and mechanic that you can add. So yeah. Anything else you want to add for kind of lessons learned?
No, I'd say we can go
You want to go on
just go to questions.
Okay. This is the team that was a team of student employees that helped build the app. They say hi. So, but we'd be glad to take any questions that you guys may have about
And
the
it was all
program.
developed in-house. So
Yeah, it's all Ball State.
yeah. So the initial timeline was a little rushed. So for our beta of this, we built the whole app out in 3 weeks, ran the beta for the rest of the semester. Then we had to wait about 2-3 months to see if the second round of grant funding was coming in. And then when we got the second round of grant funding, it took about 4 more months to build out the initial app. But I mean, it's taken about it's taken about a good year to get the whole app built out. Because what happens is the app is relatively simple, but how do we get the data into the app? How do we tie into other campus systems? How do we deal with those kinds of things? The app itself is very, very simple. In my mind, at least, it's a pretty straightforward, simple app. The time-consuming part is integrating with other systems. Where does the data come from? And that's the part that's taken much more time. And that's even not to pick on student affairs, but they're not the most tech-intensive area of campus. So a lot of times it's like, well, what do you use for that? And, well, we use this thing, we think. So there's internal names for things, and then we have to figure out where that system actually is, and can we, does it have an API? Can we get to the data? So a lot of the time is just spent kind of kind of tracing backwards to figure out where the data is and then how we can integrate it into the app. The app itself is pretty simple. So, I mean, really the initial build out of the app was about 4 months. And that's, pretty much with the team here. Making the little badges, the little avatars, like that obviously takes designers, a little bit of time. It takes about a half hour per badge. I personally think because they get a little too into it, and they really love this 16-bit, 8-bit Nintendo look. And I think they get a little too into making all those a little too detailed. But we've got them now for everything on campus, movies, different. I mean, we just got tons of them now, so we can pretty much insert them easily. Yeah.
So you mentioned about the rewards. So it is a manual process. Is that what you said? So they go to the library. How does that get into your app?
So, well, it's not entirely manual. Basically, the whole economy in the app, I mean, that's all automated. But it emails you, and then the bookstore, and then the account person, and basically says, this student just claimed this, and then that way we know what account to charge it to, and then the bookstore knows that they can.
Well, he was asking about the library. So you're asking about like achievements, like when a student does something, how do we know?
Oh, okay.
So that is manual to an extent. So it's not. We don't have one big repository. Okay, so it's like we don't have a spot where we tell everyone on campus to go here, put your stuff in, and then we can track it. That would be awesome, but we don't. So it's manual in a sense that we have to find, okay, so there's all these different silos like we talked about. So we're going to each one of those and establishing an automatic connection of some kind. And that's where that gets, it's difficult to call it automatic when we have to do it so many times.
So for like study hall, for example, the NCAA athletes and Greek life already had one. Mm-hmm. So we just tap into that.
Yeah.
And it was something that was built in-house by somebody in the library. So there's no marginal cost per additional user kind of thing. So it was just like, yeah, we can just tap into that and start using that. And for the most part, everyone, when Scott talks to them and explains kind of what we're doing, most people want more people to be engaged in their programs. Mm-hmm. So that hasn't been an issue. It's been finding those different places that already have existing systems, and then again, figuring out how to get to that data.
And all the systems are different. That's the biggest hurdle.
Yeah. So those are great questions. The answer to the first one is this was part of the Breakthrough Models Incubator, which was an NGLC and EDUCAUSE project. And so they did 2 rounds of funding. They did an initial round where our executive team went to Seattle and kind of went through some training, and they tried to figure out what problem to focus on and solve. So that's where the funding came from that. And then, Gates money, basically, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And then the answer to the second one, ask us in about 6 weeks. The data that we've looked at so far, so our Office of Institutional Effectiveness has been really involved in this project, and that's been a lot of fun to silo out the research. It's been a lot of fun for a couple reasons. One, they have very, very comprehensive data on students, but they have a single moment in time. They have, one fall survey, one spring survey. So they've been correlating a lot of the data we're giving them from our app to the existing data about those students from the various surveys that they've been doing for years, as well as the incoming freshmen. And we've been trying to filter out selection bias as much as possible. So we've looked at everything as far as engagement. We've looked at, major, gender, geographical region, high school GPA. I think we looked at
high school engagement.
Yeah, high school engagement. Like we looked at a ton of different factors, or I should say that they did to try to build out models around the students in this. But the reality is, the first big real test for us is this fall. In terms of fall to spring, our numbers were right where we wanted them to be. But the real big test will be this fall. And the reality is we won't know for a few years if we're really getting people through in 4 years. And that's, for better or worse, the state of Indiana has 4-year graduation rate as basically the primary funding factor for higher education. So we're a state public, a public state institution. And so that, for whatever reason, that's Indiana's #1 goal. So In terms of long-term viability of this, if we can move the needle and we can increase the 4-year graduation rate, that literally leads to additional funding for the school. So that's why we'll know this fall when we get, we'll match up our users and we'll take a look at all that data, and we'll know if we were able to keep a larger share of our students than the whole population. And that's why, again, when we talk about like engaging them, I mean, we're going to start reaching out to the students again soon, and just reaching out to them through the app and reminding them and doing the best that we can to bring them in. And that's why also the claim with friends. We know if they've engaged in peer groups and whatnot, Greek life, so forth and so on, because one of the things that's in here is joining a club, on-campus jobs, those kinds of things. So then we'll be able to look at all of that data too to figure out how that all plays out. So, Android and iOS. Yep. Yeah.
So can you tell already, like, what percentage of students are using the app?
So we hit about 25% of our total potential population by the end of fall semester.
Do you target like one class?
Oh yeah, sorry, we targeted
Freshmen?
just freshman Pell students. Yeah, and that's why we've had a lot of conversations about how we want to divide it out, because now we'll have a new class of freshmen, we'll have freshmen and sophomores, and so we've had a lot of ideas of that, but we've decided so far just to keep them in a single app and allow that. And that's what we're trying to figure out right now. Do we let them do the exploration achievements again? Do we not? We're figuring out those things. Well, and that's what, yeah, and it's kind of interesting. When we created the levels, we honestly did that kind of arbitrarily, not really knowing where we'd be. And we did have two or three students that did actually level up at the end of freshman year, which was our goal. Like, our goal was kind of that at the end of the first year, you get to level up. And we have some things we're doing. I don't know if you noticed the app was like blue when you're seeing it. Well, the entire app changes color. The whole interface changes colors as you level up and things like that. Well, one of the main feedback points that we got from students is like, how come this doesn't feel like Ball State? And in our minds, we're like it's so cool, but the app changes it. But they didn't see. So, so we're going to just basically lock in the interface red. I mean, some little details like that. But we hit about 50%, I think, by the end of the year. But we'll see how many of those users come back, so forth and so on.
So I'm just curious, so 25% of your total student population?
No, 25% of freshman Pell students, which is about a third of our population at Ball State. Yeah, we have a pretty high percentage of Pell, first generation, that type of student. Yeah.
Is there a way for us to see a glimpse of the app? Can you log in?
I would be happy if you want afterwards. I can do a little demo and actually show you. Probably the hardest part about this project is that since it does tie into all the live systems, we didn't have, we had to come up with a pretty elaborate way to show it to Apple for the App Store, the iTunes App Store, because we can't just give out, we can't give out a fake student, we can't give out a real student's ID, and they wouldn't let us create a fake student, so nor would they let me be tagged as a Pell. We came into all these different situations. So the downside of it being attached to all the live data is that it was very difficult to do that. But I'm happy to show it. Just come down and I can do a quick demo. Oh, we're over time. Are we? Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks so much. I'll do that quick demo real quick.